Hey YouTube, what is good? So this week I'll be showing you behind the scenes from the shoot we had with Laura a while ago, like somewhere in summertime. The idea was to create some nice headshots with fire going on. I didn't want to do too much fire creation in post-production, so we just took newspaper and yeah, we lit it on fire. As you can see on the right side, there is a cube which has water in it to prevent anything from happening. And there's another person on the set with a fire hose to spray water if needed. So there's no flash, nothing going on. It's just daylight, which was cloudy and sunny that day, so it was a mixture of both. And then I'm measuring Laura, and I'm just shooting with the Nikon D850 combined with the Sigma 105 macro lens to create nice headshots. It was a little bit of looking around to see how we would confine the fire and what's the best part to ignite it, but as you can see, we tried some things and in the end it really came out really nice. So let's jump straight into Photoshop and I will be walking through the retouching of the image I've created. So let's first open up Lightroom. These are all the images shot on that day, so there's no removal or anything. This is the way I've shot the images. So if we go through them, this was the first image shot. As you can see, it was totally overexposed. And yeah, it's just a mixture and seeing like what framing, what angle might be cool. And then we just start shooting and see what we get out of it. So let's go back to the grid view. So you can see a few images created, like this image. It's pretty cool. It was shot at 5.6 with a shutter speed of 1/160th, ISO 200 with the focal length of 105, since it was the macro Sigma lens. So when we go back to the overview, you see that these were way too bright, so I decided to underexpose the images quite a bit, because with the dynamic range of the D850, it shouldn't be an issue to bring back some shadows, which is not an issue. So as you can see, this is like totally a mess. And one of the problems we had was the smoke. So when we ignite the newspapers, the fire comes, but also the smoke comes. So that's one of the things we have to keep in mind, because it changes things around quite a lot. So you can see it's a mixture of crazy images. And then when we go to the final end, this is one of the images which was totally retouched. And then the other one was, this is the original one, this is the retouched one. And this is as well another one. So I'll be opening up this image in Photoshop. And let's just open up this file, edit original. Photoshop will open it up. As mentioned in previous videos, my layout in Photoshop looks a little bit different than what you're used to. Just a quick reminder, my brushes are on my left side and everything else is on the right side. So layers will be down below. Then we got the properties panel here. We got a bunch of plugins, tools, which I just tried. It's not like I'm using them a lot. And while it's opening, because it's apparently a large document format, so it might be that it's PSB. There we go. So when this image is open in Photoshop, this was the original image. I decided to change my cropping in this image because I wanted to make a 4:5 framing for Instagram, social media. So first things first, I just removed some stray hairs, some like pimples which bugged me and jumped out. Then I did a frequency separation. Frequency separation is nothing more than splitting up the image in texture and color. This way you can control the transitions in color really nicely, but you also have control over the texture in an image. Now, that being said, once this was done, this step, so this is the frequency separation, you see that I transition smooth out, not really smooth out, but transition the transitions a little bit smoother. but it still has texture in it. So keep that in mind. Like this is 100%. You can still see all the textures in the skin. And then the next step was just pulling out this part. The way you do it is really easy. So you just make like, you merge everything together by hitting Ctrl, Command, Shift, Alt, E. It merges everything, but it keeps the layer stack beneath it in order. Then I just make a selection with the rectangle marquee tool. I just selected a little bit more than what I needed. And what I'm gonna do now is go to Edit, and Content Aware Scale. Now, an important thing with this is hold down the Shift key, because if you don't hold down the Shift key, it will stretch it, but it will stretch it in height and in width. So we don't want that. We want to only stretch it in width. So by holding down the Shift key and dragging this out, you can like completely remove it. So that was this step. And as you can see, we only have fire on the left side. So I decided to take another newspaper, copy it, turn it around, and then just merge it in. Let me open up this folder. So this is so these are all the little parts taken from another image and then just masked it in with a layer mask, as you can see here. So when we do it like this, by holding down Alt and Shift, you can see the layer mask you have actually colored. Now, that's the compositing part. So at this stage, I'm happy with the result I'm seeing on my screen. Now, the next step will be dodging and burning. So let's jump into dodging and burning. And dodging and burning is nothing more than making things brighter and darker. And you can even out skin tones with it as well. So let's do that now. So when we change to dodging and burning, there is actually this little folder. And as you can see, it creates a lot of depth in an image. Now, first things first, how do I do dodging and burning? Normally I use curves. With curves, you can control the brightness or the darkness in an image, because on the left side, you got the shadows. On the right side, on top here, you got the highlights. And of course, in between, you got the midtones. Now, what I do is I drag them up a little bit, and I do the opposite for the darkening. And then I just take a brush, a soft brush. I cannot emphasize that enough. Take a soft brush and just paint in the areas you want to be lighter or darker. I'm not sure if I still know. I removed them. Normally this is done in a black and white, because in black and white you don't see color shifts. If we make things brighter or darker, saturation will shift and the hue will shift. So that's something to keep in mind. As long as you don't do it too much, like this little change in a curve, it shouldn't be an issue. Now, when I've done this, I normally continue with my retouching, and then in a later stage, because I'm working non-destructive, I come back and I create these gray layers, which is nothing more than just like a blank layer. Then we go to Edit, Fill, and then we just fill them with 50% gray. We do OK, and we change the blend mode to soft light. Those are those three layers. Now, on a soft light, dodging and burning works differently. If you paint with white, you make things brighter. If you paint with black, you make things darker. Keeping that in mind, like each part, like I can show you, this is one part, this is another part, this one is almost empty, and this one as well. So these layers, they create some sort of depth, meaning you start to create a three-dimensional image from a two-dimensional image. Sounds a bit crazy, but this way you make an image really pop out. And then at a later stage, we start to play around with coloring. Now, coloring is something personal. I'm gonna show you the way I color this image. Again, keep in mind, it's totally personal. Do whatever you want with colors. I'm just gonna explain what I did. So I added an adjustment layer and I adjusted it only in the reds. Then I did another one and I adjusted only the yellows. Now, at this stage, it's up to you, but normally what I do is I merge everything together again by hitting that shortcut combination Control, Command, Shift, Alt, E. And when I hit that combination, as said in the beginning of the video, it makes a merge layer, but it keeps the layers beneath it intact. Now what I'm going to be doing is adding a camera raw filter on top of this edit. That means the settings you've used in Lightroom or in Camera Raw, you can bring them back in the image by just going to Filter and Camera Raw Filter. This way it opens up the Adobe Camera Raw, and here you can adjust settings. Now what I like to do is convert this thing to a smart filter, because this way when you do adjustments in the Camera Raw filter and you go like, yeah, I like it, if you don't do it in a Camera Raw filter, there's no way to go back into it. So the only way is to convert this to a smart filter. So you go to Filter, Convert for Smart Filters, then it changes it up to a smart filter, and then you can reapply Camera Raw filter, and then you get a combination like the one on top here. So then you get this. This is just a preset I made, nothing fancy. As you can see, it makes things more yellow. That's the only thing. Then we went on. This is like, no idea what it is. Probably a layer that shouldn't be there. And then we did another round of color adjustments. So at this stage, I was not really happy with the result I had. So I decided to tweak it a bit more. And then this combination of layers came into play. So first things first, let me just, so this one just pops everything up. So it gives a little bit more green, a little more magenta in the shadows. This one just make things a little bit brighter, a little bit more punch, because you see a slightly S-curve, which means a little bit more contrast. Then I did the same project again. So I merged everything together. I applied a smart filter conversion, and then on top of that, I did a Camera Raw filter adjustment. Now, I have some presets, so I put a preset on this one, which worked really nicely. And then at a later stage, I popped the right eye because it was a little bit too dark. And then I did reduce it down a bit, because this way it's a little bit too scary. So I reduced it down and make it darker a bit. Then the next step after this toning, so this is this. So this is actually the folder that creates that really big difference. Then at this stage, we did some Liquify. Liquify is nothing more than changing an image to a certain look you want, but don't change the model too much. Like in this instance, what I've done is I've created a little bit more fire on the right side, popped the hair a little bit, and then made the neckline a little bit thinner. Then I put in some highlights or color dodge. In color dodge, you can paint in a specific color and it will make that specific color brighter. That's why it's called color dodge. If you remember dodging and burning, dodging is making things brighter. And then the final stage was sharpening, and apparently removing some flyaway hairs, which was done with the quick spot healing brush tool, which automatically calculates the things it needs to be removed. This works really nicely when we're doing flyaways. It calculates the hairlines pretty nicely, not every time, but normally it's okay. And then you can easily remove this fuzz on top of the hair. So that's the entire edit. So as you can see, this is the original one. This is the retouched one. It's a pretty big difference in this case. But yeah, keep in mind, this workflow is a workflow I use every time. Now, if you want more in-depth tutorials, I've got a Patreon channel where you can subscribe. Each month I try to do a complete retouch walkthrough, going from A to B. And I'm open there for questions if you got questions about a specific retouch. There are also images and behind the scenes videos, so totally up to you if you want to check it out. And for the rest, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell, all the goodies. And then I'll see you when I see you. Ciao, ciao.